Hi, so today I'm going to be making one of these perfect circles. What we first started to do was trying to do it with a jigsaw, and the blade just kept pulling in and making very uneven cuts, and so we decided to move on to the router table. And so we've got a router table here set up with the router underneath. And what we've done is figure out what the center is, drilled a hole on the table itself at the right distance away from the blade, which I'm going to raise in a little bit. This is not raised up currently. And then we're going to raise it gradually and be able to make our circle with this. All right, so I just realized that I kind of messed up. See how it's turning right now? It's got the screw in the center and it's turning, but the blade's not even going to touch. And so I'm going to have to move this a little bit back, and because this is meant for a Super Susan, the front isn't going to matter because I have to cut out a triangle out of it so that when it spins I can still close the door in that section. So I'm gonna move it back slightly over here. I'm gonna move the screw back, the hole back by about 1/2 inch, and that should do the trick. And so there you go, problem solved. It's going over. The blade is definitely going to cut everything, but I'm gonna spin it around. On the other side, I'm not too concerned with that because I'm going to be cutting all that out anyways, so that's not a big deal. So I'm going to secure this on the bottom. Alright, so finish that. Now what we're going to do is we've also made another hole because this is the Lazy Susan, or the Super Susan rather. But what we want is to cut off a piece that's going to actually serve as the lip on top, so that, you know, pots and pans that we put on here aren't going to fall off. So I've already made a hole underneath here, so I'm just going to move it over. To where I want it. Now this blade is 19 millimeters and my wood is 18 millimeters. And yes, I work in millimeters because it's a little bit more precise than having to work in smaller numbers, bigger fractions, especially when I'm doing this kind of work. And I learned that recently. All right, so I'm gonna get this going, and it's probably gonna catch a little bit, so I'm gonna hold it tight before I start spinning it. There you go. So I got the center of my piece. This is going to be my Super Susan, and then we've got this piece here that we are going to tack on all the way around, and obviously we're going to be cutting a little bit off, but this should work out perfectly. And then we're going to put on some edge banding here to hide the plywood, and And that's that. All right, so now that I've got these rings cut, and this is pre-finished plywood, so the problem with that is that it's very shiny, and when I go to glue it onto the other piece, it's not gonna glue. So I'm gonna have to sand off the finished edge on this and the finished edge on the Lazy Susan pieces over there. So just the edge though, I don't want to damage the part that's going to be visible. All right, so now that I've done this, roughing out the edges, I would be able to glue them on. I still gotta figure out how much exactly is being cut out. And so I have a lot of mathematics to do here to figure things out. And I think it's gonna be fairly simple. So, but what I'm missing is actually a base piece that's going to be the right measurement so that I would be able to determine exactly where the part that's getting cut out of this needs to go and how much exactly of it needs to go. So that's going to have to wait, and that means that I can't really install those. The reason I didn't sand the edges, the outside edges of these or this, is that I'm only going to do it once it's pinned on. Once it's pinned on, I'm going to try to make sure as best as possible that the pieces line up, that they're nice and flush, so that when I put on the edge banding, that it's not going to look bad or not be able to glue on properly as we're trying to install it on. And so these pieces are ready to go, at least for our bake day tomorrow, where we're going to be assembling cabinets. All right, so now before I get anything going, I'm gonna have to use this pre-finished edge tape. I'm gonna put it on the inside so that wherever the pots and pans are hitting, it's a nice finish before I tack it on to the Super Susan. Okay, so now that we are done putting the edge banding on with an iron, we're gonna try this handy dandy tool that is going to cut off the excess edge banding. So as you can see, it's surpassing a little bit, and so we're gonna cut that off. See how this works. Never used this before. So I mean, that wasn't too bad, but unfortunately it's kind of taking off a little bit of the pre-finished varnish on the edge here. And so we're gonna do the other side. This one doesn't matter because you're not gonna see it. All right, so I've just vacuumed this piece. Oh, I have to vacuum this one. And we're gonna use some fast setting glue and some pin nails to pin this in place as we go around. And then we're gonna sand the outside edges and get the last piece of edge banding on. And so I'm just gonna clean this up and get going. Okay, so the next part is that we're going to be sanding everything out over here nice and flush, so that when we put the edge banding on, it has actually something to stick to. Right now it's very rough. There's a lot of wood sticking out everywhere, and so that's got to be all cleaned up so that the edge banding will glue on properly. Alright, so yesterday what we did was we glued and nailed this piece on, and we then put the edge banding, the 1.5 inch edge banding, and we were using a tool to actually remove the excess edge banding, and it was actually scratching it. So in the end, using an X-Acto knife was actually way better and didn't damage the wood any further. Then I went in and sanded all the edges, and now I'm going to have to put on some finish so that, because this edge banding was not pre-finished as the inside one was. We also added 2 pieces here so that it really closes in the Super Susan so that nothing falls out. And then what we had discovered was that this swivel plate that we got, that I installed and failed to show you, but the swivel plate actually didn't have a stop on it, and so it, you know, when you go to close the door, it would just kind of go right past and risks kind of damaging the corner quite often. And so what we've done is built this contraption. This was a piece of a picnic table, like napkin holder, and so we shaped it into like a kind of like a M shaped, and then we put in a bolt in here, and we just kind of hammered it in. It's got that square edge on the top of the bolt, and we just inserted that in there so that it has a place to lock in. And so that means that when it's in that section, that's exactly where it needs to go. And so that kind of solved our problem. And so the next step is to assemble this corner cabinet. This is all installed on, the swivel plate is on. There's a hole at the top to install the swivel plate, and you kind of line it up to find the screw hole, and then you're screwing it in right in there. And so centering it was a bit tricky, but we finally figured it out. And so there you have it, a Super Susan ready to install into a corner cabinet. So getting super excited, and I'll show that process coming up.